Welcome to Hard Script.
She said I was getting nothing tonight. Not a joke. Not playful. She said it while adjusting the small ring light on the kitchen counter, testing the angle for a teaser clip she planned to post before bed. The glow from the phone screen cut across her face, sharp and white. I was still in my sanitation uniform, boots by the door, the smell of diesel and city heat clinging to me. Claire did not look tired. She looked energized. She said she had an early strategy call with Ryan in the morning. She said she needed to stay focused. She said growth required sacrifice. The word sacrifice hung in the air between us like it only applied to one person. I had been up before sunrise, riding the back of a city truck through narrow streets, lifting bags that tore at the seams, dealing with complaints from residents who thought their trash disappeared on its own. I came home expecting quiet, maybe dinner, maybe the kind of normal that used to exist here. Instead, there were cables running across the floor and a portable mic set up where our fruit bowl used to sit. She ran her fingers through her hair and recorded a quick intro about strong women in the city who refused to be held back by outdated expectations. She smiled into the lens when she said it. When she finished, she glanced at me and said she hoped I understood. I nodded. That was the moment something shifted. Later that night, when she showered, her laptop remained open on the dining table. A shared Google Drive folder filled the screen. Episode outlines, guest lists, sponsor pitches, and one folder that did not belong there. Our personal photos, vacation shots, bedroom selfies, images that had nothing to do with branding or empowerment. The folder had been recently modified. By Ryan. I closed the laptop gently before she walked back in, towel wrapped tight, already rehearsing her next episode in her head. The next morning, she left before I did. Claire moved quietly, but not carefully. She assumed I was asleep. I watched her from the edge of the bed as she packed her laptop and a change of clothes into her tote bag. Not gym clothes. Something sharper. Black blouse. Heels she did not wear for grocery runs. She said she had to record late at Ryan's studio in Lower Manhattan. She said the acoustics there were unmatched. She said serious platforms required serious spaces. I told her to have a good session. She paused for half a second, like she expected more. A question. A comment. Resistance. She got none. On my route that day, the city felt louder than usual. Metal bins slammed. Trucks idled too long. A few of the guys joked about influencers who thought they were saving the world with microphones and hashtags. I did not join in. I just kept moving, lifting, tossing, compacting. During lunch, I checked the shared drive from my phone. The folder with our personal photos had been moved into a subfolder labeled Brand Assets, Private. There were new files inside. A draft pitch deck. A slide titled Authenticity in Relationships. One image thumbnail was blurred but recognizable. It was a picture she had taken of us in our bedroom mirror months ago. Not explicit, just close. Intimate enough to never belong in a sponsor deck. The modification history showed Ryan's account had accessed it again. That evening, Claire texted that she would be home late. She said they were outlining a new episode about women outgrowing partners who refuse to evolve. I stared at that line longer than I should have. When she came home, she was wired with energy. She talked about potential sponsors, about a media contact Ryan wanted to introduce her to. She did not ask how my day had gone. I let her talk. And while she described her next level, I quietly removed my email from every shared document connected to her show. She did not notice right away. For 2 days, Claire kept moving at her usual speed, recording clips in the kitchen, taking calls in the bedroom with the door closed, laughing too loud at something Ryan said through her headphones. I stopped adjusting the mic stands. I stopped editing her audio when she asked for just a quick cleanup. I told her I had early routes and needed sleep. On the third day, she called out from the living room, confused. She said she could not access one of the shared folders. She said the permissions had changed. I told her I had streamlined my accounts and removed myself from anything related to the show. She stepped into the hallway, arms crossed, trying to keep her tone level. She said my name had always been listed under technical support. She said sponsors liked knowing there was someone handling the back end. I told her she could update the credits. She stared at me as if I had just declined to hold a door open. That afternoon, while she was out, I logged into our home Wi-Fi admin panel. The network had been under my name since we moved in. I changed the password, not out of anger, just maintenance. Then I logged into the phone carrier account. The family plan had been bundled under my contract for years. I separated her line into its own billing profile and removed my card. I did not announce any of it. That evening, she tried to upload a full episode and called from the living room, saying the internet was down. I told her the router might need resetting and suggested she check the settings. A few minutes later, her phone chimed repeatedly. She walked into the bedroom with a tight expression and asked if something had happened to the mobile plan. I told her the account had been updated. She asked why I had not told her. I looked at her and said she wanted independence. She did not respond. Later that night, her show credits updated online. My name was gone. Ryan's name appeared twice. The message came on the fourth day. We need to talk. It appeared while I was riding the back of the truck, the city rolling past in gray and brick and early heat. I did not open it right away. I finished the block. I climbed into the cab when we moved to the next route. Only then did I read it again. We need to talk. No emojis. No explanations. Just urgency. When I got home that afternoon, Claire was already there. The kitchen looked like a production set abandoned mid-shoot. Cables tangled. Notes scattered. The ring light was off. She stood by the counter with her phone in her hand, as if it had failed her. She said sponsors were asking questions. She said one of the shared links had broken when my access disappeared. She said Ryan was frustrated because a few files had been stored under my drive and were no longer reachable. I told her I had deleted nothing. I had only removed myself. She walked closer, her voice lower now. She said I was sabotaging her at the worst possible moment. She said this was the break they had been working toward. I reminded her that she had told me I was getting nothing. She flinched at that, but did not deny it. She said I had taken it out of context. She said she had meant that she was exhausted and focused. She said this was about her career, not about replacing me. I watched her hands tremble slightly as another notification lit up her screen. Ryan had texted. She turned the phone face down this time. I told her she wanted full control of her platform. I told her she had it. Then I walked past her into the bedroom and began packing a small duffel bag. She did not try to stop me immediately. She just watched, realizing that independence was no longer a slogan. She followed me into the bedroom once the zipper closed. Claire stood near the dresser, arms wrapped around herself, watching me fold another work shirt and place it inside the bag. The room felt smaller than it ever had, crowded not by furniture, but by everything that had shifted in a few days. She asked where I was going. I told her I had found a short-term place closer to my route. Early mornings were easier without the commute. She said this was extreme. She said couples fought. She said grown adults did not dismantle their lives over one sentence. I did not raise my voice. I kept moving. I unplugged my alarm clock, slid it into the side pocket, and gathered a stack of documents from the nightstand drawer. She said Ryan had nothing to do with us. She said the photos in the drive were part of a branding discussion about authenticity. She said nothing had been posted. I told her I had seen the modification history. She went quiet at that. Her phone buzzed again on the bed. She ignored it this time. She stepped closer and said she felt like I had been drifting for months, like I never understood her ambition. She said Ryan challenged her, pushed her to think bigger, helped her network with people who mattered. I looked at her and told her I did not compete with mentors. She said I was twisting it. I lifted the duffel and carried it into the hallway. In the kitchen, the ring light stood like a spotlight over an empty chair. She asked if I was filing for divorce. I told her I was filing for separation of responsibilities. She did not understand that answer. I picked up my keys. She said we needed to talk this through. I told her she had already gone live without me. Then I walked out, closing the door softly behind me. The rental was a narrow walk-up on the edge of Queens, close enough to my sanitation route that I could hear trucks rolling out in the early dark. The place smelled faintly of fresh paint and old radiator heat. There were no microphones, no cables, no ring lights, just a bed, a chair, and a small table by the window. Claire started texting the same night I left. We need to talk. The message came again the next morning, and again in the afternoon. Each one identical, like she was trying to trigger a response through repetition. I answered once. You wanted independence. It's live. After that, I stopped. On my breaks, I watched her podcast page from a distance. The newest episode went up with a polished description about women reclaiming space. Ryan's voice appeared in the intro, warmer and more present than before. My name was nowhere in the credits. 2 days later, a short video clip circulated from her show. Someone had screen recorded a behind-the-scenes moment where Ryan leaned too close as they adjusted microphones. It was not explicit, just proximity that lingered longer than professional. The comments shifted. Some followers praised her growth. Others asked pointed questions about boundaries and branding. A few tagged sponsors, asking whether the show was still about empowerment or something else. Claire called that evening. I let it ring. Caleb texted me a link to an online forum where listeners were dissecting the dynamic between her and Ryan. Words like unprofessional and blurred lines appeared more than once. I did not share the link with her. Another message from Claire came through. She said sponsors were hesitating. She said Ryan was blaming the negative attention on trolls. She said this was not how it was supposed to go. I placed my phone face down on the table. Outside, a sanitation truck rumbled past, steady and predictable. Inside, the silence stayed exactly where I put it. By the end of the week, her messages changed tone. They were no longer about sponsors or broken links. They were about us. She wrote that the apartment felt different without me. She said the router settings were confusing and she could not get the upload speed back to what it used to be. She said the phone bill was higher than she expected on her own plan. None of it sounded dramatic, just unfamiliar. I did not reply. Caleb called during lunch and said Claire had posted a vague story about losing support systems that never believed in your growth. It was framed as empowerment, but the comments beneath it were not fully on her side. Some listeners asked why she had removed the technical support credit without acknowledging the work that had been done. A few longtime followers remembered the early episodes recorded at our kitchen table. They remembered me in the background adjusting cables. Ryan went live later that day with a solo video defending their creative direction. He said success attracted jealousy. He said people sometimes try to hold ambitious women back. He did not mention me by name. Claire texted again that evening. We need to talk. This time, there was no explanation after it. I was sitting on the narrow bed in the rental, boots off, uniform folded over the chair. The room was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. I opened her message, read it, and locked the screen without typing. A few minutes later, she sent another. She said Ryan had suggested they lean into the controversy for engagement. She said he believed drama could drive downloads. I imagined her in the kitchen, ring light on, trying to turn confusion into content. I placed the phone on the table and turned off the lamp. The dark in that small room felt steady. For the first time, she was broadcasting without a signal back. She showed up at the sanitation depot one afternoon. Claire stood near the gate in a tailored coat that looked out of place against metal fences and parked trucks. A few of the guys noticed her immediately. They noticed everything. I had just climbed down from the cab when I saw her. She was holding her phone, but not filming, not posting, just gripping it like it might anchor her. She walked toward me carefully, avoiding puddles and oil stains. She said she needed to talk in person because I would not answer. She said Ryan had suggested she address the rumors directly on the podcast. She said he thought transparency would strengthen her brand. I wiped my hands on a rag and listened. She said she did not want to turn our situation into content. She said she had not realized how quickly personal boundaries could blur once work and validation mixed together. She said the studio in Lower Manhattan had started to feel less like opportunity and more like pressure. I did not interrupt. A truck engine started behind us, loud and constant. She said sponsors had paused 2 tentative deals. She said Ryan was focused on damage control and growth metrics, not on her. She said she felt exposed. I asked if she was still recording there. She hesitated before answering yes. She said she needed the platform. I nodded once. She stepped closer and asked if I was done with us. I told her I was done being an accessory to someone else's narrative. The words settled between us without shouting. A few of my co-workers were watching from a distance, not openly staring but aware enough. Claire glanced around, realizing this was not her audience. She asked if we could meet somewhere private to talk it through. I told her she already had a studio for that. Then I picked up my gloves and walked back toward the truck, leaving her standing outside the gate with nothing live to stream. The episode she released after that was different. There was no polished intro music layered perfectly over her voice. The tone was quieter, almost strained. She spoke about misjudging alliances and confusing mentorship with loyalty. She never said my name, but she described a partner who had handled the invisible work for years without asking for credit. The comments shifted again. Some listeners asked if she had lost the person who kept her grounded. Others pointed out that empowerment did not mean discarding stability once it felt ordinary. Ryan did not appear in that episode. Caleb sent me a screenshot of the show page later that day. The producer credit had been shortened. Ryan's name was still there, but the description beneath it had been edited. No more language about guiding her evolution or reshaping her brand. Just a simple line about audio production. Claire texted again that evening. "We need to talk." This time, she added that she had asked Ryan to pause their late-night studio sessions. She said she wanted space to reassess. She said she felt like she had built something on noise instead of substance. I did not respond immediately. A few days later, she showed up at the house. Not the rental. The house we both still legally shared. She waited on the porch while I stepped out of my truck after grabbing some remaining mail. She did not try to justify anything. She did not mention sponsors or metrics. She said she had reviewed the drive and deleted the personal folder herself. She said it should never have been there. I watched her speak, steady but tired. She asked if I was willing to meet with her somewhere neutral, without microphones, without scripts. I told her I had already removed myself from the broadcast. She said she knew. She asked if that removal was permanent. I looked at the front door behind her, the same door I had closed softly days ago. I told her permanence was what she had asked for when she cut me off. Then I stepped around her and walked inside without inviting her in. The final message came without urgency. "We need to talk" had turned into "Can we talk?" There was no pressure in it this time. No assumption that I would eventually circle back. I agreed to meet her at a small coffee shop a few blocks from the house. Neutral ground. No studio lights. No sanitation trucks. Claire arrived without makeup, dressed simply, phone tucked deep inside her bag instead of resting in her hand. She did not record anything. She did not glance around for content. She said she had stepped away from the podcast for a few weeks. She said downloads had dipped after the controversy, and sponsors had shifted focus. She said Ryan had moved on to another project. She did not speak his name with admiration anymore. She told me she had replayed that evening in the kitchen when she said I was getting nothing. She described it as a line delivered out of ego, not exhaustion. She said she had mistaken my steadiness for something that would always be there, regardless of how she treated it. I listened without interrupting. She said she understood now that independence did not require cutting off the person who carried half the weight quietly. She said she had thought growth meant shedding what felt ordinary. She asked if there was any version of us left that did not revolve around a platform. I took a slow breath and looked at her across the small table. I told her I had made my decision the night she framed intimacy as a reward she could withhold. I told her she wanted a life where she did not owe anyone access. I gave her that. She nodded, eyes steady but no longer defiant. When I stood to leave, she did not reach for me. Outside, the street moved as it always had. I walked away without checking whether she was watching.